Hello everyone, welcome back to Civil Learning Online. This is 11th lecture on project management. In this video, I am going to discuss about the CPM modeling, crashing of a network, and the direct cost and indirect cost. So without any further delay, let's get started. So guys, let's begin our today's lecture on CPM cost model. Till now we have come to know that CPM is based on the time cost relationship, and the first point says that in CPM time is related to cost. The object is to develop an optimum time cost relationship, means suitable time cost relationship. CPM leads to development of suitable time cost relationship. And the second point says that CPM makes use of cost estimate along with the time estimate and provide a schedule for completing the activity at the minimum total cost. So why we use CPM network? Sometime while we are carrying out some project, we may need to complete the project before the schedule, before the normal time. Normal time can be latest allowable time. We may come to a situation in that which we need to complete the project that work before the allotted time. In that case, CPM network comes into action, and it provides us with the idea about how we can complete the work before the scheduled time. And guys, we all know that CPM and PERT are both network oriented methods of planning, scheduling and controlling of a project. And the main objective of these network techniques are not only to allow us to planning, scheduling and controlling, but also to look for a feasible path so that we can complete the project in less cost and saving our time. So that, and many organizations have the objective to complete the work before the allotted time, so that times can be utilized for carrying out some other activities, so that they can generate more profit. So now here comes how we can how the project duration can be minimized, so that the surplus amount of time can be utilized for generating more profit, or those extra time can be used for carrying out some other projects. So here are methods. The overall project duration can be reduced by reducing the duration of only critical activities, means we can reduce the overall project of any activity by reducing the duration of critical activities only. And we have also come to know that any kind of delay in critical activity will lead to delay in the overall project. So we can if we are able to reduce the duration of the critical activity, we can do that. Then in that case we will have some extra time which we can use it somewhere else, and the duration of such activity may be reduced in two ways. So there are two ways of reducing the duration of any activities. First one is by deploying more resources for the early completion of such activity, means if we allocate some extra resources, suppose we are excavation work of our trains, then if we are hiring 10 workers to carry out that for the excavation of that trains, and at this present time, then if we have to and it takes 10 days by the 10 worker to dig a 100-meter long trench. In that case, if we add some worker, suppose 15 worker, then it is sure that our overall duration for carrying 100-meter trench by the 10 worker will be by 15 worker will be reduced. And this is what we need to and we also know that worker is going to be resources for us, or if we are implementing some machinery for carrying out those for excavation work, then that is also our resources. And the second method is by relaxing the technical specification of such activities. So here there are some different technical specification of activities, so we can relax, means we can compromise the technical specification of some activities, so that the duration can be reduced. In CPM there are two time and cost estimate for each activity: normal estimate and crash estimate. First one is normal estimate. In normal estimate, the emphasis is on cost, with time being associated with the minimum cost. Means in normal estimate we do not care about time, any be the time, but we have to save cost. And the second thing is crash estimate. Crash estimate involves the absolute minimum time required for the job and the cost necessary to achieve it. Here the emphasis is on time. In crash estimate, what happens, we just focus on saving the time and what resources must be allocated so that we will be able to save time, and in that case the cost may rise than the normal cost. Here there is a concept that when we are about to complete a project in normal time, we are not crashing the time, just some normal time, then it will require some cost. But when the when the duration is reduced, then what happens, how we can reduce the duration? We have to implement some extra resources. Extra resources can be money or some other additional materials, like it can be manpower, machineries, etc. Suppose we have to dig a trench and we are hiring one excavator for digging that trench, and we have to reduce the time. Then what we need to do, we have to hire 2 or more than 2 excavator for digging the same trench. And if it takes, we are making that excavator to work for 1 hour, then we may need to increase that hour to 4 hours. In that case our cost will be increased. In that case, that condition is called crash estimate. And the optimum duration is that duration which allows us to complete the work or any project in minimum cost and time duration, which gives us most economic cost for completing the project, and that duration is called the optimum duration. So next comes the project cost. So in the diagram I have clearly shown that when the duration exceeds the normal duration, then the project cost increases. Similarly, if the duration is decreased, project cost increases. There is a point which is called as optimum duration, when the cost is minimum. That is what it is clear shown in the diagram. And whenever we draw a project cost diagram, then such type of figure is obtained. And here that the same thing which I mentioned already this time, it is mentioned, I have pointed out here, that if a project goes on indefinitely, means there is no any limit of time, then the cost will increase. Similarly, cost will increase if the project is accelerated, means we have to complete the project before normal time, then in that case cost will increase. And the cost is minimum at some optimum project duration. Here you can see that the minimum cost is shown here, that then the duration is optimum duration. And we also know that the optimum duration is that duration which allows us to establish a proper suitable relationship between the time and cost, means cost and time. And further here the total cost is the sum of 2 separate costs, means total cost consists of 2 types of cost. First one is the direct cost for completing the work, means direct cost means it is a direct cost which we require to complete the work. And the second one is the indirect cost related to control or duration of that work, finance, overhead, lost production and the like. That things are called indirect cost. So if we further divide into total cost, then we have direct cost, indirect cost, and indirect cost comprises of outrage, loss and overhead. We are going to learn about the direct cost and indirect cost in detail further in this lecture. So let's move toward the next topic. So here comes indirect project cost. An indirect project cost increases with time. We will learn about what are the things that are included that comes under indirect project cost, and why it is a straight line and why it becomes curve. So here we go. First point says that indirect cost on a project are those expenditure which cannot be apportioned or clearly allocated in the individual activities of a project, but can be assessed as a whole. Indirect costs are the tiny costs which cannot be assessed, which cannot be considered as a single per head, one by one unit, but we can consider the indirect cost as a whole. And here are some examples what comes under indirect cost. Indirect cost includes the expenditure related to administrative and establishment charges, overhead, supervision, expenditure on a central store organization, loss of revenue, loss of profit, penalty, etc. comes under indirect cost. And the third point says that indirect cost rises with time. It is shown in the this diagram also, that indirect cost project duration, when it increases, indirect cost is rising. So when we crash a project, then indirect cost decreases but the direct cost increases. That is the case. Fourth point says that when there is loss in profit, means suppose we are carrying out a project and we are going to achieve some profit on completion of that project, and in some cases due to delay in that project we may need to face penalty, or we have to pay some amount as a punishment. Then in that case our amount of profit is reduced. In that case, and then what happens, our overhead, our indirect cost increases. And further, let me read the line here: a corresponding cost increase must be added to the cost. So when we were made to pay some penalty, then our cost is increased, indirect cost is increased, producing the curve shown in figure B. So here is figure B, and it happens that when we are we faces some loss, then what happens, our indirect cost, which was a straight line, it gets into curve, and it again increases with time, so it gets curve, and the total indirect cost curve, here it is shown in the diagram, and the total indirect cost will be curved. That is what I have shown you here in the diagram. It is clear these two diagrams are followed while talking about indirect project cost in a project duration. So after learning about indirect project cost, here comes the direct project cost. What are direct project cost? Direct project cost are those expenditure which are directly chargeable to and can be identified specifically with the activities of a project. So here is the difference between direct project cost and indirect project cost. Indirect project cost was that cost which we cannot assess directly, means we have to consider it as a whole, means it includes different kinds of cost which were overhead, supervision, expenditure on a central stores, that were indirect cost. So we were considering them as a whole, but here direct cost can be assessed directly. Here it will be more clear. Here there are some examples of direct cost which includes labor cost, material cost, equipment cost, etc. Labor cost means we are hiring them for brick masonry or plastering or making concrete, that are labor cost. Material cost means different kinds of material which we use for completing that project. Equipment cost can be different kinds of equipment which are machineries or signboards, etc. are equipment cost that can be assessed directly, so that are direct costs. And here is an example: consider the excavation of a trench for laying a pipeline. Total time was considered as a 40 man hours of work. Labor charges are RS 12, RS 16 and RS 20. This is just an example for the first, second and third shift respectively. See here how the direct cost increases with time. Here is an example: suppose we are hiring one man for single shift, and it takes 5 days for him to complete the trench. Then if he is working at a first shift and the cost of first shift is 12 hours, so 12 times 5 is 60. Suppose so here we are hiring single man and he is working for single shift and the time is 5 day only, so the total cost for that man will cost for digging a trench is RS 60. Similarly, if we are hiring 2 men and the shift is double shift, means they are working 2 times a day, and they are working for 3 days, means they are able to complete the trench in 3 days. So and they are working in for 3 first shift and 2 second shift, means see here so for digging that trench they were involved in 3 first shifts and 2 second shift, and it cost us 3 first shift means 3 times 12 36 and 16 times 2 is 32, and total they are going to cost 68 days. Here you can see that our duration is decreased and the cost is increased here. Similarly, if we are hiring 3 men to dig the same trench in 3 shift system, then they need to work for only 2 days. This is just an example. They need to work in for only 2 days to complete the same trench. See how our cost fluctuates here: 2 first shift, 2 second shift and 1 third shift, means they have completed the trench while working 2 first shift, 2 second shift, and 1 third shift. They completed work, and it would cost us 76. So if we draw the diagram of the direct project cost, then it is going to be of this manner. See here, we can see here we had the cost is 76 and the duration is 2. Similarly, when they work for 2 shift, this is 3 shift, and when it took 68 rupees when they work for 3 shift system, and when they work for single shift, it cost 60 rupees. So when our duration is decreased, our cost has increased. And when we generalize the direct cost time relationship, then it is going to take a form of curve, and here we will have crash duration. Normal duration is denoted by Tn, and here it is normal duration, and when the normal duration is crashed, we have crash duration, and corresponding to crash duration we have crash cost. And as you can see here, when the time is when we are implementing minimum time for completing a project, cost has risen to maximum, and here when the project was going as per the normal duration, then the cost was minimum. So after learning about the different terms which were normal time, crash time, normal cost, and crash cost, I have picked out some definition for the TAT points, and let me read it out. The project has the highest cost corresponding to the crash duration and has normal cost corresponding to the normal duration. I have already mentioned it. That's why we have 2 types of cost and 2 types of time, which are defined below. And the first one was normal time. Normal time is the standard time that an estimator would usually allow for an activity. Means in the diagram it was denoted by T, and normal time is usually the allocated time within which we have to complete that activity, that is called normal time. And the second one is the crash time. Crash time is the minimum possible time in which an activity can be completed by employing extra resources. Means crash time are those time in which crash time are the minimum time in which we have to complete the work implementing extra resources, and it must be possible. We cannot simply crash the time, so that we need to crash the time in such a way that other activity will not be critical. And the second point is crash time is that time beyond which the activity cannot be shortened by any amount of increase in resource. So crash time is that minimum time at which when we are able to apply some extra resources, but that is not going to work in reducing the project duration. So the third point is the normal cost. It is the direct cost required to complete the activity in normal time duration. So when we are working as per the allocated time by the estimator, then the cost required during that period will be our normal cost, which is noted by Cn. And the fourth one is crash cost. Crash cost is a direct cost corresponding to the completion of the activity within crash times. Means the cost which we need to bear while we are working in during the crash time, then that cost is called crash cost. And we have a formula for cost slope, and the cost slope is the slope of the direct cost curve approximated as a straight line. Cost slope formula is Cs equals to Cn minus Cc minus Cn by Tn minus Tc, and Cs can be written as in short form as delta C upon delta T, where Cs is equal to cost slope, delta C equals to increase in cost, and delta T is decrease in time. So now here comes total project cost and optimum duration, and you may have a question in exam to draw a typical cost duration curve and show its optimum duration and minimum project cost. So first of all, I am going to discuss about this first figure, which is total cost curve. So we have come to know that when direct cost decreases with time, and indirect cost increases with time, and when these two are cost and the total cost curve is combination of the direct cost curve and indirect cost curve. So here we go. Here when we do combine these two curve, we get some this type of curve, and at some point when the duration is optimum, the cost is minimum, and this is clear from this diagram. When the total cost is approximated to one or more straight line, then our total cost curve will be of this form. Means it is consisting of two straight lines, and this is direct cost and this is indirect cost. And while drawing, and And when we are drawing the indirect cost, if indirect cost faces some outage losses, then our indirect cost here it is in a straight line, because it is representing that it is increasing with the increase in duration. But when indirect cost when we faces some kind of penalty or outage losses, then indirect cost will also be curved, but from downward to upward, and direct cost is decreases with time, and total cost is the combination of direct cost curve and indirect cost curve. Here it is shown. And when our total cost curve is consisting of two or more straight lines, then it will be direct cost will be of this form. And at some optimum duration we will have minimum cost, minimum direct total cost, and it is clear from the diagram. Now